a few nights ago, a few afternoons ago, I was having tea with some of the guests here at the monastery, having some tea time discussion, questions and answers. And one of the topics that came up in our discussion was around how to use certain teachings, maybe that we don't completely understand or have a penetrative understanding of, how to hold them when we're not sure about them and haven't really experienced them ourselves or know what to think about them in relation to the teachings, the training, and how to use teachings as contemplative strategies rather than doctrines to believe in. I thought that would be kind of an interesting thing to explore a little bit tonight, just because it's a really fundamental aspect of our practice in the way that the Buddha set it out, that we aren't instructed to pick up teachings in a way that's basically just on a scholarly or intellectual level, so that we can develop, skill in presenting our views and opinions, or enter into debates with people about our view being right and everybody else's view being wrong, or any of those kinds of things. The Buddha pointed out the unskillfulness of that and how it doesn't actually get you anywhere oftentimes other than getting ensnared and entangled with views and opinions and conflict. So how to use teachings for the purpose of realizing the end of suffering, ultimately. And picking things up and using them, the teachings, as contemplative strategies is pretty much how he instructs us to hold the practice, the teachings and the discipline, the monastic discipline, the lay precepts, how to use them skillfully. It's the word opanayiko that we see in the chanting means to be brought in. The teachings, the Dhamma, is to be brought in, not just to be learned on an intellectual level. And it doesn't mean to say that the Buddha doesn't have some categorical teachings, meaning that he basically presents them as, in a way, facts or, accurate representation of natural laws, for instance. And so, the discussion that we were having was particularly around karma and rebirth, and how to use that as a contemplative strategy rather than as a belief that you have to believe in or don't want to believe in, not holding it in that way, one way or another. But many of the teachings, there are a number of teachings where he categorically says, well, this is, as I understand it, as I've experienced it, this is how it works. All the teachings in the category of right view kind of fall into that, karma, rebirth being two of them, but also like the Four Noble Truths is a categorical teaching. But even with categorical teachings, they're not to be picked up, to be used just for the sake of understanding on a conceptual level, but then to be applied for that strategy of reducing the end of suffering. So categorical teachings, other teachings that aren't so categorical but more reflective, all of these should be used as skillful means. And the ones that we don't understand or haven't experienced for ourselves, we can pick them up and use them as working hypotheses. We haven't proven it to ourselves, necessarily, but we can pick up things on faith, not blind faith, but the faith that, okay, so what I've picked up and applied before from the Buddha's teaching seem to have had an effect. They seem to work. So the Buddha taught this, which I haven't really experienced. I'll pick it up on faith because everything else has worked so far, or a lot of things have worked so far, and I'll try it out. I'll pick it up as a hypothesis, try it out, see what happens, what are the effects in my mind, in my heart. It's a learning, it's a learning process, it's an educational process that we're picking up. And we're using it with a spirit of inquiry, not as a spirit of doctrinal belief. I think one of the best examples of this that sometimes gets misunderstood is, particularly when one first encounters the teachings, is trying to figure out and understand what sometimes is referred to as the doctrine of not-self, anatta, or the characteristic of not-self. Just the way it's phrased sometimes, like the doctrine of not-self or the characteristic of not-self, starts to turn it into something that is more along the lines of a description or of a belief, rather than as a contemplative strategy. And I think it's really useful to kind of undo that habit, because you get a lot of people who are reading it and trying to understand it, and you end up with the inevitable questions of, well, if there, okay, the Buddha says there is no self. If there is no self, what is all this? This body, this mind, and then from there goes a whole barrage of questions that just run in circles and don't lead to any kind of deep understanding. Think about a time quite a few years ago when I was up at staying at our Pacific Hermitage in White Salmon, Washington, and Ajahn Sudanto and I were invited to give a presentation at a local community college, actually on the other side of the river in Oregon, at a community college close by, to a religion class. They were studying the world's religions, and they asked us to come and share some of our understanding of Buddhist practice. It was a great class, very lively people, very intelligent, well-thought, inquisitive minds there. And eventually it came around to this particular teaching on not-self, and one person in particular, a young woman, was asking a lot of questions about it. And I started to explain how the teaching on not-self could be used as a contemplative strategy rather than as a doctrine of belief, as a way of deconstructing, in a sense, this sense of self, and kind of trying to point out that the sense of self is a perception. So you can't get into saying there is no self or there is a self. If you start saying things like there is no self, then it really tends to negate the experience that we all feel, that we all know. It really feels like there's this, me here. I'm here. I'm this body. I'm this mind, or I am in control of this body or in control of this mind. So we don't want to deny. And the Buddha never said, really, he said there is no self. And sometimes it's unfortunate because I think, like in our chanting, there's the line in the morning chanting that we often do, Sabbe Dhamma Anatta, and it's created there. It's translated as there is no self in the created or the uncreated, which I think is kind of myself personally, I think it's kind of an unfortunate translation. because it tends to reinforce the view, the idea, the concept of there is no self, when in fact there's a very strong perception of self. So sabbe dhamma anatta, I think, is better translated as all dhammas, or all things, are not self. And you can see there's a different kind of quality between saying there is no self and all dhammas are not self. And the second translation, which I think is more accurate, refers to that contemplative strategy. But anyway, as it is, we were having this discussion, and I was sort of explaining to her that as a contemplative strategy, one can go through what it is that we normally think of as self, which is laid out in very succinct phrases in the Anatta-Lakkhana Sutta. The 5 aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. And though in some form or combination of those aggregates, singularly or collectively, we impute a sense of self around them, so that we take this body and or this mind in its various forms to be who we are. The Anatta-Lakkhana Sutta kind of goes through each one of those and starts to unravel that perception with some skillful questioning to the bhikkhus. So I was explaining to this class and particularly to this one inquisitive woman, how we go through each of these aggregates. We look at the body, we investigate it, and we see it very clearly through a very clear, pristine lens of samadhi, of collected mind that's been settled in meditation, and start to examine our assumptions of this body being who we are, or something that we are in possession of, and really carefully examining it piece by piece, part by part, function by function, and asking ourselves, is this something that I have control over ultimately? Is this something that is who I can say that I am or that I possess? And we do that through the aspects of mind, our feelings, the pleasantness or unpleasantness of experience, the perceptions that we create. Perceptions are patterns that we create to help organize our world around us based on sense data that comes in through all the different sense bases. We create mental perceptions to help organize and make sense out of this world. Are they who we really are? Are they completely under our control? Are they unchanging? And so on through conceptions, mental formations, constructions, fabrications, and also consciousness. So I was explaining this process of going through one by one with a clear mind and examining them to see whether they stand up to the test of something that we could call me or mine. And that the process is deconstructing our patterns of perception that impute a sense of self on all of these 5 aggregates. And that, that's the process. It's not a process of trying to find out, is this who I am? It's a process of trying to uncover that this is who I'm not. And she was really intrigued by that and was thinking out loud, processing out loud. And then she said, so I think I get that. She said, so you go through this process of deconstructing who it is that you really think you are as a contemplative strategy. And then when you finally penetrated that and realized that, then what appears is who you really are. And I paused for a moment as I was thinking, and then my response was, well, not exactly. You go through this process of deconstructing forms, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness as who you really aren't. And the result of that is finding out who you really aren't. There is no second stage of finding out who you really are as a result of that. It's just that you've really completely 100% discovered who you really aren't. And then you leave it there to see what happens in the mind. So this is using this kind of teaching as a contemplative strategy. And then, as the teachings of the Buddha point out, with that complete understanding through contemplation, then a sense of disenchantment with all of these things that we've formerly assumed as who we are. We don't look for that sense of security, that sense of stability in these aggregates, these changing aggregates. And that's what leads us to a relinquishment, a letting go of constantly moving within those realms of trying to create happiness, stability, permanence, security in the world of the aggregates. And then it offers the opportunity to open up to what the Buddha described as the unconditioned, that which does not participate or partake of the world of the constructed, the fabricated. But he doesn't go into redefining it and reifying it, if you will, and concretizing any kind of experience into a sense of self. So there's some interesting, there's many strategies along this particular contemplation that the Buddha gives to us, many teachings, many suttas that kind of describe this process. And it's too short a night to be able to go into all of those. But there's one that is kind of an overarching one that I've always liked. It's a very straightforward, simple simile that points into the use of this as a contemplative strategy that I like. And the Buddha's with a group of his disciples in Jeta's Grove, which is Anathapindika's park, and a place where he spent a lot of time teaching. And it's just a very simple, straightforward simile that he offers. He says, okay, in this Jeta's Grove, if there were people who were going around and collecting all the grass, all the leaves, all the twigs, all the branches that are scattered around, and starting to walk off with them to take them, to use them for something or to burn them, would you say, stop, don't take any more of those twigs. That's who, don't take us, don't take me. Don't take mine. Those twigs and grass and leaves. Don't take me away. Don't burn me. Would you say that? And the monks respond, of course not. And the Buddha says, why is that? And it's because that's not, that doesn't have anything to do with us. That's not who we are. It's just products of the forest. And he said, well, in the same way, you should not assume to take possession of, to hold of, to identify with that which isn't yours. And what is it that isn't yours? Form, this body, isn't yours. Abandon it. Feeling isn't yours. Abandon it. Perceptions are not yours. Abandon them. Mental formations aren't yours. Abandon them. Consciousness isn't yours. Abandon it. In the same way that you abandon and don't take possession of and don't concern yourself with the forest products being taken away. Don't regard any of these 5 aggregates as yourself. Abandon it. Abandon that which isn't yours. So you can start to use that as a contemplative strategy to think, okay, well, just in the same way that all these bits and pieces of the forest are just mere elements, earth element in particular, same way you can regard the body as just mere elements, the organs, the fluids, the winds, the different aspects of heat, the 4 physical elements of this body. That's just all it is. It has nothing to do with me or mine. So there are many other suttas that work along similar lines to help deconstruct that sense of self. Not saying there is no self, but just deconstructing that perception. And developing another perception of not self, which you can pick up, not as a doctrine, again, but as another contemplative strategy. Another kind of aspect of the teaching that's I found really useful as a contemplative measure, contemplative activity, is something that Ajahn Sucitto has talked about. I found out a real nice way of thinking about the body and the mind. He talks about it in terms of intelligence, and that normally when we think of intelligence, we think of it in regard to the intellect, appropriately named. The intellect being the aspect of mind that is involved with conceptualization or objectification, abstraction, organizing thoughts and principles, planning, those kinds of very active mental activities, part of the mind activities, the intellect. So that's normally when we think of intelligence, somebody who's able to process information well and make associations well. And it's a very useful tool that we have, this intellect and the intelligence within it. It helps us to organize data to store in our memories so that if it's useful data, we can then retrieve it and help to organize our world in useful ways. If it's used correctly, it can also be co-opted very easily by the defilements of desire, aversion, delusion. And it can be co-opted, this conceptualization process, this intellect, and its intelligence can be put to harmful ends from just creating all sorts of stories that create unskillful states of mind, and we dwell on those and proliferate on those. So it depends on who's in charge at any one time, what's in charge, whether that intellectual ability is used to our benefit or not. But we can use it as a very powerful tool. So there's that kind of intelligence. But there's also other kinds of intelligence that we don't really think about too much as a contemplative strategy. Keep on using that phrase. But thinking of the bodily intelligence and just starting to observe the body as a very independently intelligent organism. It has its own innate intelligence that we don't really pay much attention to. We kind of go on automatic pilot with our body. So like, say you're sitting down reading a book or something like that, and all of a sudden you get hungry, and you put the book down, you get up, you go to the fridge, you pull out a bagel, you cut it in half without cutting your finger off, pop it into the toaster, turn around, go find some mayonnaise or mustard or whatever, slather it on the bagel, put some cheese, some sprouts, put it all together, take it back to the table, sit down. All of these activities that you're doing, you're probably not really conscious of them very much. And maybe you're even, talking to a friend. You got your earbuds plugged in and you're talking to somebody on the, over the phone, or listening to some music, or listening to a Dhamma talk on not self while you're making your sandwich. But you've kind of gone through this whole process and you haven't had to think about it consciously. You haven't had to instruct your body how to get up and lift its foot and move it forward, and then do the other foot to get you going towards the direction you want, how to open the fridge, how to cut the bagel, how to construct a sandwich. You're probably doing this without much awareness at all. The body's just going through and doing all these incredible feats of activity that require incredible dexterity and precision. And you're, talking to your friend and not even paying any attention to much of what you're doing, although there's a general kind of maybe awareness of some motion and something happening. But this is the bodily intelligence. This body has its own innate quality that helps it function, whether we're aware of it or not, whether we're conscious or not. It even functions when we're completely unconscious, like you're in anesthesia, having surgery, and the body keeps on functioning. The heart keeps beating, the lungs keep breathing, the metabolic processes keep happening. When you are conscious, there's all the movements and everything that the body's just doing without much awareness on our part. So this is the innate body intelligence, and it's quite profound. Similar to the mind, it's the mind itself, not the intellect, but like the citta has its own kind of innate intelligence that feels, that is sensitive. It picks up and experiences perceptions and feelings. And it does it with a kind of an innate intuition that's so like, as an example, something comes along that's a moving experience. You see somebody who's having difficulty or struggling or suffering in some way, and it doesn't take any kind of thinking process to feel a response. There's a response that the citta can automatically feel this sense of compassion. So a sense of caring or compassion or concern is an intelligence of citta, of the heart. And it doesn't need any rational prompting to have that kind of understanding or that kind of experience. Or something, you do some sort of unskillful action that has caused difficulty or harm, something you say or something you do to somebody, some action that causes some harm. And if it's seen clearly and recognized, the heart responds automatically with this sense of, oh God, why did I do that? That's so painful to see, I feel really bad about that. You don't have to go through a big intellectual process of analyzing step by step, what happened to go through to that. It's this kind of, if you have cultivated a sense of conscience, this sense of regret, skillful regret, arises because the heart is impacted. So this is the innate intelligence that our citta can operate with, or does operate with, for better or for worse. So there are these kinds of intelligence that if we really bring them into regular contemplation and experience them, we can start to realize, oh wow, my thoughts, my feelings, my perceptions, even my bodily activities keep on operating, whether there's my conscious present awareness with them or not, whether I am in control or not, whether I'm present or not. And we can start to step back a little bit from this kind of enmeshed quality of our awareness, our mind, with the object, where we identify so strongly with these aspects of the body, with the aspects of the mind, even the very subtle fluctuations of the mind, the processes of the intellect. All of these are happening kind of on their own steam, without the presence of an agent that needs to be, in control, or that is in control. And when we can use our meditation to quiet the mind and start to examine these experiences, not thinking about them so much, but watching them as they manifest, watching the bodily experiences as it manifests, with this sense of just a little bit of distance, a little bit of growing distance between the quality of knowing, pure knowing, and the activity itself. Then this gives us a sense or an experience of this perception of not self. A little bit of disentanglement, deconstruction from this marriage to a sense of I am. So I found these are useful tools. I have a lot of appreciation for the people who have articulated them in this way, the Buddha's teachings, our teachers' interpretations of them, because that really brings it out of the realm of doctrinal belief or intellectual appreciation, and into the realm of a strategy that we can use and pick up that actually results in some real deep insight, so that we really, our perspective of who we are in this world starts to change. And we are discovering ways to help free the heart from the entanglement that we've weaved for ourselves. And as we do that, as I mentioned before, there becomes this sense of disenchantment of doing that. We see the kind of the ridiculousness of how we keep creating all of these paradigms in a way that we think will give us some sort of sense of long-term gratification, but doesn't. It's short-term. And we adopt new strategies to help steer the mind towards that clear seeing, that clear awareness of the way reality works, and how much we construct this sense of self to provide a sense of security for ourselves. We don't need to do that. And as we are able to realize that and understand that and experience that deeply, then this profound sense of freedom can arise, this appreciation of letting go, of relinquishment of these old habits that can serve as the stepping stone or the entry point into what is sometimes referred to as the entry into emptiness, this experience of emptiness of self, and the freedom that results from that, and the ability to be able to use that as our point of leaping off into the unconstructed, the non-manifest, and use that just as an experience to understand and to realize, realizing the Four Noble Truths, understanding suffering, understanding how it's caused, practicing the way leading, and then the complete realization of the end of suffering. That's the potential by using all of these teachings as contemplative strategies rather than just as interesting doctrines to believe in. So just a few thoughts for this evening, and I'll leave it at that for now.